Everyone has a story. Everyone's self-etched path is different and unique to them.
Doctors, psychologists, and therapists are treating teens for depression and anxiety at a greater rate than ever before.
We hold memories of days past within us, and sometimes we dare not share it.
The number of young adults living with their parents is at an all-time high.
Sometimes these memories are painful, sometimes light is shed upon them when we are gone, and a narrative is painted by other eyes and other minds.
A new study has found that teen suicide rates are on the rise, with attempts more than doubling in less than a decade.
I don't want my story to be lost nor misinterpreted, because my story shapes who I am and who I will become. How do you even start something like this? My name is Richard Wagner, and I have anxiety and depression. I thought that it all came about with life-changing moments when I was starting middle school, but in the process of writing my story, I've begun to realize I've had it even longer. I just didn't understand what that feeling was. I remember at an early age getting these really weird feelings. Time would almost slow down to a crawl. I would focus really heavily on my breath. I'd almost feel lightheaded, spinny. You know, one minute I'd be sitting there playing with my toys, and the next minute I'd be gripping my bed because it felt like I was just losing control. It would happen when I was asleep too. I would have these really weird dreams of shadowy figures on the wall, and I would get the same feeling, and then I would wake myself up and I would still feel it. You know, the biggest memory that I have of probably my first real panic attack happened when I was 6, 7. I was at my uncle's house. We were having like a barbecue or some gathering, and I must have felt it coming on because I at some point went to the front porch and sat there, and I remember feeling really afraid for no reason at all, and I was crying, and I think my cousin alerted my mom to that, probably thinking I was hurt or something, and my mom came out and asked me what was wrong, and I didn't know. And being young and not knowing what was going on, the only thing that my brain could think of at the time was that I was afraid of death. I was afraid of dying. This is a really fucked up thing for a kid to say, and it wasn't necessarily the truth, but it was the only thing that I could closely associate with how I was feeling. It was just pure terror. It was weird. It wasn't like death was on my mind. I just didn't know what else to say. I know that all these years later, I was really having a panic attack. My dad and uncle needed to go to the store, and I tagged along because, you know, I wasn't really in the mood to play with anyone or do anything else besides sit there. And I remember sitting in the parking lot, and they were talking to me and trying to tell me that there was nothing for me to be afraid of. There was no reason for me as a kid to be afraid of death because I was young and, you know, I was gonna live for a long time. But they also told me that it was something that everyone faces at some point in their life. It's the one certainty that we have. And when it happens, most times you're not afraid. It's a part of life. At some point, religion came into it. I grew up going to church every Sunday. My mom worked in the nursery there, so every Sunday I went to church, and I was, that was what I grew up around. That's the truth that I was told. But that day that I was sitting there in the parking lot in the car, having a panic attack, my dad gave me an alternate to that reality. And he said that he believed that when we died, it was internal darkness. That you didn't feel anything. You were at internal rest, internal peace. There, you wouldn't suffer anything anymore. And that's why you shouldn't be terrified of it. Because it's the one bit of tranquility that we would get. After that day, I started to notice my panic attacks more and more, believing that when it happened, it was simply because I was afraid of death. I was a troubled kid. I was diagnosed with ADHD very early on, was given tons of medication, Ritalin, Adderall, you name it. Basically anything that was prescribed in the early 2000s for a kid with ADHD, I was on. And none of them worked. Some would make me very violent. I had a very short temper, and I wasn't afraid of people or conflict. I would get in fights. I was a violent person. I was suspended a lot from school, quite a lot. And then some of them would give me weird tics. I know at one point, one gave me a tic where I would pull my eyelashes out without realizing. Another would make me a zombie, is what my mom would describe it. Now I would describe it too. I wouldn't eat all day, and then at like 2, 3 in the morning, I'd be starving. And so I'd sneak downstairs, and my mom would find me sitting in the darkness on the counter just eating donuts or sweets or whatever. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Not really. A lot of nights I would sit in the hallway. We had a heater that would blow heat into the hallway, into all our rooms, and I would sit there against the wall facing it until it turned off. I was pulled off of medication 4th or 5th grade, one of those. I think it was 4th grade, shortly after starting it. And my teacher noticed a big change in me. I was finally a person. I was myself. I was, I was normal, From then on, I haven't been on any medication since. My 4th and 5th grade teacher was Mr. Tracy, and he was easily the best teacher I had in my life. He would take the time to sit with me one-on-one and when I needed him the most, and help me along. I was never left behind. If I struggled with a given task, he would change the task around my strength. I never had a teacher care about my success like he did. One of my dumbest, most vivid things that I remember was a poster by the clock that read, "The harder you work, the faster time flies by." In my 1st through 3rd grade, I had the same teacher, Miss Coe. It was here that I wrote for the first time. I never did my homework. Hated it. If I didn't do it in class, I sure as hell wasn't going to do it at home. I can't remember if I just did it or it was suggested to me, but I started writing short stories for extra credit. I wrote a short story. It was titled Funeral Days. This is basically my version of Mortal Kombat meets a soap opera. And if those still exist somewhere and I ever see them, I hope they never see the light of day. I wrote a lot of short stories. I would take a piece of paper and I would just fold it in half and like a book, and I would just write a quick story. And I think my teacher liked it because my spelling was terrible. And it was an easy way for her to correct my spelling and show me how to correctly spell a lot of things that I was struggling with. That might have been the benefit for her as a teacher, but for me, I was learning an incredibly valuable skill. Writing would become a huge part of my life. Even now, as I make this series, much of it would be written. But it soon would become a tool, a way to communicate what I was feeling or thinking without fear. A fear that would grow as I started 6th grade.